Miami's getting ready for the arrival of FC Barcelona. On Tuesday, August 6th, Bayfront Park is the venue for Barca Fest Miami. It's an event packed with fun, music, and a lot of Barca. Entertainment, Barca store, and food trucks. But the main attraction of the party will be live performances by Playing Skills and Pedro Capó, who's had one of the biggest hits of the summer. See you at Bayfront Park on August 6th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. to enjoy the Barca Fest.
Welcome to On Trial, starring Mark Radulich, also starring Sean Comer. Hope you're ready, Hollywood, because you're on trial.
All rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Tarantino presiding. This is On Trial, the podcast that puts your favorite movies on trial. We prosecute, we defend, we look at the nuts and bolts, and there will be much rejoicing. Joining me on this trek tonight, such as it is,
motherfucker. I had stopped laughing, ass.
On the docket tonight is the Quentin Tarantino follow-up to Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, and for the defense tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Sean Comer, you're not.
I'm 36 years old, and I'm finally mystified by the reverence for Quentin Tarantino. And I say this as somebody who for years has loved his movies, but I am finally hitting the point where I have the courage to question, not necessarily why is he so popular. I get why people like his movies, but just why is he revered as this, saintly, infallible god among filmmakers?
I would liken it to you're served a steady diet of McDonald's, and then you go home and mom makes you meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. And it's just mom's cooking, and it's just a meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. But God damn it, for the last year, all you had is McDonald's, so it tastes like, a 4-star Michelin restaurant quality meal.
That's it. Hang on 1 second. I'm sorry. Lady Jet Bear is showing me something.
What is she showing you?
Lady Jet Bear has started a pure romance side business, and she was showing me a rather amusing, bluntly worded, and frustrated message on her mentor's Facebook page about why people are so kind of clutch the pearls aghast when they find out that she sells sexual products. Am I getting the gist of that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which part of it I blame is people who do that, you embody so many reasons I'm leaving this part of the country in 4 years and not coming back.
So Jackie Brown was the follow-up to Pulp Fiction. And I'm going to throw a couple of things out there. I discussed a little bit of this on Damn You Hollywood regarding Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think Quentin Tarantino gets a lot of leeway because he's one of the few filmmakers with a vision, with a distinct style, with a point of view that's allowed by studios to not be burdened with notes, and to kind of, and to play outside the sandbox. I mean, we get the Marvel Cinematic Universe changed film in such a profound way that I think now when you get something that's big budget, high release, and distinctive, it gets praised, maybe sometimes without it being worthy of praise, but that, again, starving man living on nothing but McDonald's will enjoy a good meatloaf. that being said, and I'll get into this more with my prosecution of Jackie Brown, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, by the way. I love this movie. I loved it when it first came out, and I believe it was 1997. And I loved it to this day. I rewatched it again today. It's a phenomenal movie in my opinion, but I can see why the majority of people who loved Pulp Fiction didn't like this. This gets made now. I don't think it receives as much criticism. It unfortunately had to follow this profoundly different and amazing film. It was not only an Oscar winner, but it hit big. It hit big among the mainstream. And Jackie Brown is not really a mainstream movie, and it's definitely not like Pulp Fiction. So I think the mainstream folks who don't pay attention to film and are very much passive moviegoers, passive TV viewers, expected Pulp Fiction 2. And they got this tribute to Foxy Brown and Coffee, of which almost anyone listening to this podcast has probably never seen before. But boy, did I see them! The Dollhouse and the Big Bird Cage and all those, 70s era blaxploitation or girl in prison type films. So without context and expecting a Pulp Fiction 2, I can see why your average ham and egger is like, meh, so this isn't for me. But we'll get into that a little bit more later. But rest assured, this is a hard movie to pick at and prosecute, all things being equal. But I'm going to throw it to Sean now for him to give you the deets. Give me the deets, baby, as they say on Twitter.
Well, so, fun fact, this is the first and only time Quentin Tarantino has adapted somebody else's source material. Right after he finished making Pulp Fiction, he and Roger Avery acquired the rights to 3 Elmore Leonard novels, Freaky Deaky, Kill Shot, and Rum Punch. And by the way, for the record, I am a huge Elmore Leonard fan. Love him. His plan at first was that he wanted to make either Freaky Deaky or Kill Shot and let somebody else take a stab at Rum Punch. But then he read the novel, absolutely fell in love with it, and decided that that was the one that he wanted to adapt. And actually, Kill Shot would later be adapted by Tarantino's Jackie Brown producer and longtime collaborator Lawrence Bender. Freaky Deaky, I believe, at one point got a film treatment of its own, which I've never seen. And when he started adapting Rum Punch, Tarantino changed the ethnicity of the main character to black from white, flipped her name from Bert to Brown, titled the screenplay Jackie Brown, and decided that he was going to make this pastiche tribute to his favorite blaxploitation films, and that was going to be kind of the motif, setting it in the 1970s, reborn in 1995. For his part, Leonard absolutely loved the screenplay. In fact, of the 26 times his novels have been adapted it for the screen, he considered it the best, and also said it was possibly the best screenplay he had ever read, period. And for his part, Tarantino stuck really pretty close to the source material, with the aforementioned exceptions. He doesn't consider it a blaxploitation film. Fuck if I can guess why. Because, I mean, motherfucker, you lifted not only background music, but the fucking typeface for the titles from Foxy Brown. You quote both Foxy Brown and Coffee repeatedly. You cast the icon of all icons, alongside probably only Jim Brown and Richard Roundtree, in your lead, and revived her career with this movie.
For a short period of time.
Yeah, it was fleeting, but it was a shot in the arm. You cast Samuel L. fucking Jackson. I don't even need to say anything else. You have Sam Jackson and Pam Grier in a movie, and you're gonna declare this isn't a blaxploitation movie. Feel free to, in your head, affix the sarcastic SpongeBob meme to that all you want to. You litter the thing with admittedly a sweet, sweet classic soul soundtrack. The main title.
She didn't burn the ghetto to the ground with a machine gun, so it's not blaxploitation.
The main title theme is Across 110th Street by Bobby Womack from the film of the same name, which is a blaxploitation movie. How you figure this doesn't just I swear this is going to make me sound all over the place because I like this movie. I swear I do. It's just that again, it's one of those, like, as I put it before we got on the air, it's like the opposite of Boondock Saints for me, which is one of those movies that when I was in college, every fucking frosty tip trucker cap wearing dude bro that I knew at Northwest Missouri State positively popped a throbbing redwood erection at even the mention of that stupid movie, and swore that it was a masterpiece of modern filmmaking. And I just didn't get it at all. This one, I actually liked it, but now it's making me look at the rest of his filmography and wanting to look at everybody who positively beats off to every one of his movies and just go, dude, calm down. All he's doing is just remaking every movie he's ever seen.
But not in a funny way like Seth MacFarlane.
And now I'm sitting here and I'm trying to have a little sidebar with myself where I'm trying to decide who's actually less original. And
Seth MacFarlane versus Quentin Tarantino in a reference off.
Yeah, Quentin Tarantino, who basically throws every movie he ever saw, every 70s movie he has ever seen into a blender and just hits frappe and just kind of shits out, whatever comes of that. Or Seth MacFarlane, who, when it comes to his animated series, has basically remade the same fucking show 3 fucking times.
Well, look.
And nobody somehow noticed.
I love the Orville, but it's basically the best modern Star Trek.
I'm not talking about the Orville.
No. I'm furthering your point. I'm furthering your point. Please allow me to do that. The Orville is the best fucking Star Trek show in modern history.
I agree.
But it is Star Trek.
Uh-huh.
Period. It's like
I agree, but the man somehow manages to make Family Guy, The Cleveland Show, and American Dad, and nobody wants to acknowledge he's pretty much living up to the Family Guy gag that took the piss out of him.
My father-in-law and I, will often talk pop culture, and his cultural anachronism makes Robert Winfrey look like a YouTube influencer. He's been busy making money, so he hasn't seen a lot of this stuff that I talk about. Mm-hmm. And he falls back on the same line. There isn't an original thought in Hollywood. And the gods of that point of view are Seth MacFarlane and Quentin Tarantino.
I wouldn't go maybe quite that far. Since there have been some really good original movies over the last couple of years. I would venture the horror genre in particular has had some really great ones.
Sure. I mean, I could nitpick the guy's argument, but he's my follower and I'm currently living in his house.
And I'm not even going to say that the man isn't without kind of his own signature style. And the best way I can put it is, it's how one of my favorite internet reviewers, Nash, once described Willow. He said, it's not that it's a bad movie, it's just a movie you've definitely seen before.
Sure. And look, this isn't a pain inflicted upon a innocent public by the studios. This is heroin that we willingly injected ourselves.
Straight into the veins.
When the top 5 movies out there are all Marvel comic book movies or Disney Renaissance remakes, we have only ourselves to blame. Jay Sherman of the Critic fame, good old John Lovitz, said if the movie is bad, just don't go. And we got the message wrong and went to all of them. A lot. So, when studios are like, we're not willing to take chances on original stuff that may or may not find an audience, I get why. We've created an atmosphere where people shying away from taking risks are not going to jump out there and be like, let's try this really crazy idea from this visionary director. They're in the business of making money, not art. So along comes Quentin Tarantino, who's like this diamond in the rough, and even if you hate his stuff or you don't get it, he's still like, of all the things that are out there right now, so far off the beaten path, and his shit makes money.
See, I'm glad you brought up the money versus art thing, because there's a quote. It was from Michael Eisner. And I actually bothered to look this up. I very first heard this in a review by Lindsay Ellis. And once I heard it, it made total sense, especially from somebody that, has been kind of an unfair target of many a pot shot for years. It goes like this. Eisner said, our obligation is to make money, and to make money, it may be important to make history. To make money, it may be important to make art or some significant statement. To make money, it may be important to win the Academy Award, for it might mean another $10 million at the box office. Basically, he's saying that the idea of innovating, making a statement, making what someone is going to consider high art, is a means to an end. And I think sometimes it is kind of important to sort of put aside the end and just appreciate the means on its own, when the means are accomplished successfully.
Sure, look.
But
Avatar, up until recently, was the highest grossing movie in the history of cinema, not adjusted for inflation. It didn't get that way, though, based on its story. It got that way because of revolutionary CGI and it creating an atmosphere for disaffected people to want to live in. There was an experience with Avatar that a lot of people that caused them to see the movie multiple times, because that's not all single viewings. Obviously, you don't get to over almost $3 billion on just single viewings.
No!
These were people going to see that movie 5, 10, 15 times and desperately wanting to live in Springfield, whatever the hell the name of the planet's called.
Pandora.
There we go. Close enough.
Springfield? Really?
That's what I can think of. But that's what it was. It was people wanting to live. The people who it got to almost $3 billion on people wanting to live in Pandora, not because it was a particularly good story, which it isn't. But back to Quentin Tarantino.
Yes.
All right. Any other notes, sir?
I mean, like I said, it gave a few people a brief career resurgence. Pam Grier got a little bit of a boost. Robert Forster was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. I'm gonna guess weak field that year. Not that he's a bad actor, but just Academy Award worthy performance. Okie dokie. Um, Jackson and Greer were both nominated for Golden Globes for their respective roles. Um, and one more thing. Originally, um, Greer was to be cast in Pulp Fiction. She was considered to play Jodie, but the thing is that was eventually nixed because Tarantino was skeptical that audience would find Eric Stoltz actually yelling at her plausible.
Yeah, I don't.
And a number of years after the movie came out, Sylvester Stallone claimed that he turned down the role of Louis Gara, played, of course, here by Robert De Niro. And let's of course do the obligatory rundown of the numbers. Um, Almost doing it Joe Bob Briggs style at this point. Released December 8th, 1997. Running time 154 minutes. On a budget of $12 million, this film more than justified its existence, bringing in $74.7 million.
All right.
So let's get on with the nonsense. Floor is yours.
All right, so just a quick plot synopsis. There's not much to the plot of this thing, but Pam Grier plays Jackie Brown, who's a bag lady for Ordell. Oh gosh, Samuel Jackson's character, Ordell Robbie.
Robbie, yeah.
Yeah. She gets pinched. She's an airline stewardess, is her day job at Cabo Airlines. She gets pinched bringing a bag of money by. Where are they?
Michael Bowen.
Ray Nicolette, who is Michael Keaton's character, works for the ATF, and Mark Dargis, who is played by Michael Bowen, who is, I believe, an LA detective. And they're pressuring her to turn in the bigger fish, who is Robbie Ordell, who is an arms salesman. He has multiple residences. The main one, part of the main settings for this movie is is Bridget Fonda's residence on the beach, where she plays a pot-smoking, ditzy surfer gal. And then we have Robert De Niro, who's blank-face playing Louis Gara, who just recently got out of prison and is helping Robbie Ordell with his schemes and plans and whatnot. So anyway, amidst this gun running and money carrying, as I said, she's pinched by the ATF and the LAPD, and she's pressured to give up Robbie Ordell. Along the way, we also meet Robert Forster's character, Max Cherry, and he's a bail bondsman. And we get to know him as he helps Samuel Jackson bail out Chris Tucker, who may or may not have blabbed to the cops, but it doesn't matter because Samuel Jackson's going to shoot him several times in a trunk. So then Jackie Brown gets arrested, and he bails her out too with the intention of putting a bullet in her, but she gets wise to the game. And she pulls a gun on Samuel Jackson, and they have a nice conversation about how she can get all of his money out of Mexico, to the tune of, I think it's like $50 million. So the game is afoot. She proposes several different versions of the same plan. Get Ordell's money out of Mexico. There's the plot where she's honest and true to him, and she's really going to get him his money, and he's going to forgive her for getting arrested. There's the plot where she's really setting him up for the ATF to nab him for selling guns, and this is all a ruse. And then there's a third, which is she's going to steal the money and run away with Max Cherry. We see several scenes of them setting up the money drop. We see an extended sequence of a dry run of the money drop. And then there's the actual money drop from three different perspectives: Pam Grier's perspective, Robert De Niro and Bridget Fonda's perspective, and Max Cherry's perspective. At the end of the day, Garrus and the best scene of the movie, Garrus shoots Bridget Fonda because she was a nagging bitch. Love that scene. Louis, where's your car, Louis. So he just shoots her dead. There's the Pam Grier perspective where she claims Melanie Bridget Fonda ran off with the money, and she calls the ATF, and they come away with Bubkiss. And we'll get back to that in just a second. And then there's the third, where we see Ray Foster walk away with the actual bag of money. A further scene with Lewis is he finally picks up Ordell out of a strip club. Ordell realizes that the bag is light, that he's been had, and the money is gone. And because Lewis is a dope, he gets shot. They sweat Pam Grier further, and they're like, you know what? We've got him on murders. That's just as good. If you cooperate with us grabbing him and arresting him for the murders, then the deal is intact and you're still free. Then we have the bit with Ray Foster, who's like, hey, I have your bond here. But he also has information on where the money is and how it's going to get back to Ordell, and Ordell kind of basically takes him hostage. They all convene on Max Cherry's bail bondsman service, wherein Pam Grier pulls a great line. He's got a gun. And of course, Michael Keaton, shoot first, ask questions later, takes out Ordell. Case solved. Problem solved. Case closed. Moving on. Pam Grier gets the money out of hiding, and she takes off for Spain, while Max Cherry, Ray Foster, listens to the sound of the Delphonics in his bail bondsman service. That's the movie in a nutshell. So, here at On Trial, many of the crimes that the movies we talk about have committed they are not good movies. There are issues of craft, there are issues of story, there are issues of performance. Some of the movies we've talked about look like they were shot on a cell phone. And then it's a matter of defending the jewels that are within these pieces of film. Sometimes, though, and this is one of those cases, it's not so much the movie is a bad movie. And this isn't going to be a series of nitpicks, because I don't think anyone's really interested in that, and you can nitpick just about anything. What I propose Jackie Brown is guilty of, and where I will stick my prosecution, it is guilty of being the follow-up to Pulp Fiction, and therefore harshly misjudged by people who were never going to be a fan of anything that wasn't Pulp Fiction 2. That is where this film falls down. If you make this movie today, after Django Unchained, Inglourious Basterds, and especially the fucking Hateful Eight, if you do this movie today instead of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's universally praised. People don't cry that it's boring, which is another one of the complaints against it, but not one that I will accept as a prosecutable offense, because boring is subjective. What bores one man may be hot porn to another. So forget it. I'm not going to go down that road. But I think people get caught up in this idea of they saw Pulp Fiction, they thought they knew what a Quentin Tarantino was, so when he makes a follow-up, they think we're going to get more of that. More of the Gimp. More of Bruce Willis trying to figure out what weapon he's going to use to save an ass-raped Ving Rhames. More Big Kahuna Burger. More Samuel L. Jackson yelling Bible quotes at the camera. More John Travolta being fat and dancing.
Basically, more obnoxiously quotable.
Yeah, right. And that's not what this is. So like I said, if you make Jackie Brown in 2019 instead of 1997, I don't think it suffers as harsh a criticism. But it did, it was, and so that is what we will talk about. Jackie Brown, first of all, is not an original piece, as was discussed before. It is an adaptation of somebody else's work, and even the author of said work, Elmore Leonard, said it was just fine. He liked it just fine. I mean, it's no Get Shorty, but, you know, he accepted the screenplay as it was, and Quentin Tarantino, again, I think did this without a fair, you know, without an excessive amount of notes here. So this was largely his vision. Whether or not you're with Sean in the idea that, oh, well, this is a blaxploitation movie, you know, it is or it isn't, is largely not the point. There are some whispers of that here. There are some odes, some nods. But ultimately, it's a story about this middle-aged woman who finds herself between a rock and a hard place and figuring, I'm too old to start over. I have no other skills. I have nowhere to go. I got to take a risk. And seeing her... and seeing what she does with that risk. It has all the classic Tarantino pillars that make his movies stand up usually far and away above his competitors. It has excellent performances for the most part, though there are some issues, and I'm going to talk about those in a second. There is a large amount of tension. Does she get away with it? Who is she really betraying? The mystery within the bag drop of who is she lying to and who isn't she lying to, I think is what holds this movie together. That sounds like I'm defending it, but hear me out on this. I think that's where the boring stuff comes in. Is that if you're not really willing to kind of sit through and absorb the tension, the typical tension of a Quentin Tarantino film, you're going to struggle with this movie, for sure. You have performances, you have tension, and then you have setting. Now, here's the thing. Sean mentioned before, this looks like the 70s out of time in 1995. And he's not wrong. It has a weird aesthetic to it. Maybe an unsettling aesthetic. Well, is it the 70s or isn't it? You know, it's like he very much wanted to make a 70s blaxploitation film, but had to keep it contemporary, and then got lost somewhere along the way. So, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. The muddled aesthetic is a bit of a problem. I want to talk about 2 of the leads in this, because I think they were miscast. And this, the defense might leap on, like Tigger on Pooh, but hear me out here. I don't think Samuel L. Jackson was the right person for the role of Robbie Ordell. Controversial opinion, but the problem with Samuel L. Jackson is he's again coming off his character from Pulp Fiction, which everybody liked. Just thought he was, you know, as the character was written, a bad motherfucker. Unfortunately, Samuel L. Jackson is very much Samuel L. Jackson in a lot of things. You know, with the exception of, like, Mace Windu or his character from The Hateful Eight and some pieces here or there, he's always the same guy who's just about had it with those motherfucking snakes on those motherfucking planes. It's a lot of Sam Jackson right there for you. We talked about Training Day a year or so ago when we started doing this podcast, and you know, and I talked about Denzel Washington, who can be eminently likable and charming, and he's obviously been a leading man in more films than I could name right now. But what made him kind of stand out in Training Day was just how menacing and how much of a scumbag he was. And he can stretch as an actor. And while you're looking for a roguish thug, street smart type character in Ordell Robbie, what you don't want is charming. You need an appropriate amount of menace that Samuel L. Jackson doesn't bring to the role. He's too likable. He's too funny. He's too cool. That might have been the fault of Quentin Tarantino just being enamored of Samuel L. Jackson. They might have had a conversation to the side that they both enjoy the N-word, and so, you know, he just let him do whatever. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I feel like Samuel L. Jackson did not stretch far enough for Odell Robbie, nor did Quentin Tarantino push him enough. And so the conclusion of the movie, where he finally gets his just desserts, isn't nearly as satisfying. I made this point to somebody offline earlier today when we were talking about the film. I thought it was more satisfying, and I joked about this already, but in all honesty, I thought it was more satisfying to see Bridget Fonda get shot in the head. Sorry, in the gut.
Poor Mel.
I thought it was more satisfying for her because she was not a likable character. She was quite despicable in what little she did. But she, talking about like making appropriate use of the little time in the little you have to do on screen, Bridget Fonda taught a masterclass in this for this movie. She has very little to do, but she's horrible. And every time the camera's on her and there's a focus on her, you see just how truly detestable she is. And then she has this great scene of her nagging at Robert De Niro, and she gets shot for it. And if the movie had just ended there, I'd have been fine with it. Like, yay, the villain got killed. However, the movie goes on for about another hour. And, you know, and it all, and it's typical Tarantino, it all ends in this orgy of violence, which is one guy getting shot here. This ain't Kill Bill, which I think is another problem people have with it. So you have this fairly likable character. I mean, like, nobody here's a saint. And while Pam Grier, some would argue Pam Grier is not a likable, sympathetic character because she's a thief and a liar and a manipulator and a user, I would argue she's a 44-year-old woman with limited options and a felony record. Have a heart, for fuck's sake. But again, because everyone's kind of on the same level, morally, when Samuel L. Jackson finally buys it, it isn't nearly as satisfying. Get a Denzel Washington in that role. Get somebody who can really bring appropriate gravitas and menace to the role of Odell Robbie, and do that same scene again. Much more gratifying, much more satisfying. Finally, I want to talk about the performance and the wasted talent of Robert De Niro. Now, granted, that role could have been played by a mannequin, and it might have been played better, except for the except for the end. But again, you're not supposed to feel sorry or find him to be like a likable character or be sad when he gets shot by Odell. He's a thug. He's a blank, just vacant thug who loses his temper and his cool and shoots a woman in a mall parking lot. I can understand Robert De Niro taking the role because it's Quentin Tarantino when he's the it boy of Hollywood. But this was a role more suited, I think, for Bruce Willis, and even Bruce Willis might have been too A-list for that role. You need, to go through your Rolodex of actors and find the C-list level talent, and then find the one with the appropriately vacant look in his eyes. The one that's seen that can portray, I've seen way too much death. Stallone, I actually think would have been a better choice for that role had he, if he was the one that was really considered for it. But again, he's too A-list. Maybe not in 1997, but in general. You needed somebody who I think when he finally gets his, you're like, good. And it's hard to do that with Robert De Niro, especially because leading up to that, he's kind of just mumbling scenery up to that point. And so that's a bit of storytelling issue. That's a bit of directing issue right there. And again, a waste of an Oscar-level talent. And so I throw it to the defense, of which there's a lot of great things you can say about this movie. This is not a hard movie to defend. But I don't believe that it deserves the criticism that it gets for not being Pulp Fiction 2. And it is certainly not a perfect movie. You're a witness, sir.
The nice thing about this movie is at the time it really served as kind of a portent for the notion that Quentin Tarantino could do so much more than these erratic narratives that have to start, in medias res, the story is all told out of order, and then it all comes together and makes sense in the end. That is not what this movie is. It's, is it a stylistic mishmash of movies you've seen before? Yes, but you know what? It's still one that is extremely likable, because I have to give him credit where it's due. His affection for those movies, his genuine love of them, and not just his wanting to kind of seize on them, it bleeds through every frame. It's clear that it's a loving homage. And I have to admit, the way it's shot, the way it's paced, the nature of the dialogue, if it wasn't for just, like, the odd anachronism that you'll spot in a shot somewhere, you almost could let yourself forget that this is set in 1995. Right up until you see something like Ordell wearing a Kangol hat, or Max Cherry buying a Delphonics tape at what is, clearly a mall, Sam Goody or FYE or whatever the hell it was at the time. You set that stuff aside, and it makes it easy to ignore the fact that conspicuously none of our main characters own CDs. Everything's vinyl. Nobody's listening to any modern music. It's all just, golden oldies and classics and such. So I have to give him credit for that, because that kind of suspension is tricky to pull off, and he does it pretty damn well for the span of the entire movie. Was Samuel L. Jackson probably the perfect choice to play Ordell Roby? Is that a role that would have been better played by somebody who can convey a little more menace? Yeah, probably. But then again, we've also got to remember there was a time when Sam was... It wasn't exactly an accident that he was choosing these roles. I'm not going to say he was lazy. I'm going to more say that he knew what was working for him, and he was more than ready to acknowledge it and just run with it until the wheels fell off. And he really did. He really did. He, as an actor, he made a killing getting really consistent work past a certain point, just playing a parody of himself. But, pre-Nick Fury, the man was making a killing. It's easy to forget what a really great actor he actually is, because he kind of falls into roles like this where he's allowed to just have himself a damn good Sam Jackson time. And that's what really makes it so effective, is the fact that he's clearly enjoying himself. He's having an absolute blast playing Ordell Roby and Jules Winfield. And you got to admit, we have a good time watching it. This is the man that agreed to, as you pointed out, Snakes on a Plane, based on the title. I've always heard over the years, legend has it, he didn't even read a script. He saw it was called Snakes on a Plane, and he was just like, that's it. No. Don't say anything else. I'll do it. You say anything else, you might talk me out of it. De Niro, yes, you can almost argue at this phase of his career that he was just collecting a paycheck. This wasn't Robert really trying to be groundbreaking, trying to be memorable, displaying any particular ambition, which is, given the character, is fitting. But he's just there to provide the "Hey kids, it's Robert De Niro" factor. And somehow even that works. Even when he's not trying, he still acts circles around young men and women half his age. It's really pretty incredible. It demonstrates that Pam Grier, wow, she really is just so much more than just, a natural sassy attitude, an epic fro, and, well, some pretty damn memorable brown bombers. The woman can act, and it's if anything really disappoints me about this, it's that I think this gets across that, man, maybe she's really been kind of sold short for much of his career.
Oh, she was absolutely
For that
stereotyped,
fact.
pigeonholed, and not
Yeah.
given a proper chance.
She's one of those that, man, had she come up in a different era of Hollywood where there maybe would have been some more equal opportunities in terms of the diversity of roles available to her, man.
Yeah, but can you name many movies in the '80s starring, that had a black female lead?
No, that's what I'm talking about. Maybe not even the '80s, but suppose that you take a Pam Grier of the same age and talent, and you kind of put her in the '90s, and I really don't think Halle Berry would have been the first black woman to win a Best Actress Oscar. I think Pam could have given her a solid run for her money.
She'd need a monster's ball. She would have needed a few pictures. That's the problem with Halle Berry. Halle Berry is another one of those where she takes terrible projects, but then she also takes like Oscar-worthy projects, and then they eventually throw her an award as a lifetime achievement.
Yeah, every now and then she picks a real plum role, but it's like for every one role like that, there's 3 Swordfishes or Gothicas or Cat. I wasn't quite gonna reach for the low-hanging fruit till I realized you were going to. But
no, I'm naming that as one of the plum roles.
Oh, see, I wasn't. I was running down the Drek.
No, remember I defended it. Remember?
Oh, I remember. The North remembers. Is it dialogue heavy? In fact, is it pretty typically Quentin Tarantino dialogue heavy? I would venture no. I would say it's not, because yes, there is a lot of talking. It's an extremely chatty movie, but it stands apart in that if you look at the rest of his filmography, there's so many scenes where people are just blathering on about fuckity fuck all. Just shit having nothing whatsoever to do with anything that's been going on in the rest of the movie.
Without having to go back and rewatch his entire filmography, this might be this might be the least yammering of his films.
Yeah, and you know what? It's also the most focused dialogue, because nearly everything that everyone is talking about is always coming back to the story. It's the most perfectly cohesive. And I have to give, and speaking of sort of that, I have to give credit to the 3 perspectives on the heist. But it's for an odd reason. I really like the device of having each one set to a character's kind of distinctive soundtrack. Lewis and Mel's portion is set to Midnight Confessions. As is often the case, Max's is set to the Delphonics. For the life of me, can't remember exactly what Jackie was listening to. But you know, there are not very many big-lipped alligator moments where you just get a long, sprawling, kind of obnoxious, indulgent descent into non sequitur, where when they all of a sudden try to just nonchalantly just jerk everything back to the plot, you're just left going, no, get the fuck back here and explain that. You know, there is no Madonna and big dicks moment.
But every movie should have a Madonna's big dick moment.
Your words, not mine.
Boy, that's at least the second time I've referenced Madonna's big dick this week.
But when it comes to this being an homage to blaxploitation movies, it serves a purpose that I believe really goes underappreciated by a lot of cinephiles, a lot of film snobs. And that is, it's a modern genre homage that could actually inspire people to go and curiously check out the movies that clearly inspired it. It's one of the reasons why I always roll my eyes a little bit at people who shit on the Hunger Games, saying, "It's nothing but a Battle Royale ripoff. Battle Royale was so much better." Okay, first off, fuckstick. No, it wasn't. Battle Royale, and I hate using the term overrated, it's one of the most overrated movies that I've seen in my 36 years haunting this planet. Number two, as I pointed out when we reviewed it for Long Road to Ruin, if anything, Battle Royale is a Lord of the Flies ripoff. Okay? And number three, okay, you point that out like it's a bad thing. You tell someone that there's this other movie that's a lot like this that came out sooner. Hey, you know what? Somebody might actually go check out Battle Royale and like that too. It's like it's a crime to liking things. And the fact is, you know, a movie like this, yeah, I'm sure you would have some people at the time, or those who grew up saying, "Oh, why would I watch this when I could just go watch Coffee and Foxy Brown anytime I want to?" Okay. So you're saying it's a bad thing that a movie is considered good because it's a lot like other really good things.
You know what's amazing about that? A New Hope, Star Wars, I would say it's pretty well liked by a few people.
Mm-hmm.
George Lucas has admitted that it's a pastiche of like 9 other things from the 50s that he liked.
Of fucking course it is.
But
of course.
But people act... But it's like the same people that you're talking about refuse to acknowledge that and will show up to like conventions and stuff in robes with, you know, with their toy swords and claim that Star Wars is a religion that they absolutely cannot live without. But you can't like Jackie Brown because it kind of reminds you of Foxy Brown and Coffee. Fuck yourself.
You know what? Scott Pilgrim versus the World is one of my all-time favorite movies. That's a mashup of tons of video game references, manga influence, and Brian Lee O'Malley's obvious love for Canadian indie rock. What's wrong with that? I mean, okay, so somebody might watch Jackie Brown and go check out these other great movies. I don't see that as a... see that as a crime. Just because you like thing, you are not precluded from liking other thing.
I think I might have been one of those people. I think at that point, DVDs
I
had
was.
just become a thing. I think Soul Cinema was just becoming a thing. And so Jackie Brown comes out, and I find out that it's like these homages to Foxy Brown and Coffee, which I had never knew existed. And I think that's how I discovered Soul Cinema. And I went out and I bought like tons of those movies, and I bought a bunch of Roger. And that's I think how I discovered Roger Corman in all of his, Women in Trouble movies and all of that. An entire genre of movies that I would have never known about had it not been for Jackie Brown.
Yeah, and I fully realize this is all coming from the same guy who, again, is sitting here bewildered and can't decide if he actually likes Quentin Tarantino or not. But I give him some credit for that much. And you could say the same for Kill Bill, Hateful Eight. Yeah, okay, you go watch Kill Bill. You watch it with somebody who's maybe a little bit informed about classic samurai movies, and they might say, "Hey, I think you'd really dig Sonny Chiba." In fact, he's in this movie, but I think you might like some of his earlier work too. Okay, so you go check out some awesome Sonny Chiba movies. Maybe you go see 36. You decide to dig up 36 Chamber of Shaolin or Enter the Dragon, something like that. You watching Glorious Bastards. Maybe that leads to you watching The Dirty Dozen. Yeah. Lady Jet Bear just enthusiastically raised her hand. Check out The Hateful Eight. God, there's a world of great westerns that could lead you to. It's not a bad thing for a movie to give a nod to its obvious influences. Again, I think his originality kind of gets overstated a lot of the times, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a patently bad filmmaker. It's just that, like I said, it's one of those calm the fuck down, dude things. Like almost everything he's doing has been done before, and several times arguably done better. But all in all, especially for that period of his career when he was really being very over the top with just how unconventional he could be, it is astoundingly tight, restrained, sensible, and it shows that he can actually be pretty damn enjoyable when he goes the less is more route. So, I would dare say there are few, if any, legitimate reasons to dislike this movie, except that, as my opposition, such as it were, pointed out, the fact that it had the misfortune to be the movie that came out right after his opus, right after Pulp Fiction, and it defied and in fact utterly abandoned so many of the expectations that movie set up.
I think that's where I don't have anything further to say. It was hard enough prosecuting this fucking thing, and now I'm glad I didn't do Pulp Fiction. Ugh. I don't know what. Pulp Fiction, way too. It's shot out of order. You're a witness. That's how that would have gone. But yeah, I mean, look, Quentin Tarantino. I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with my wife. I talked about this on Damn You Hollywood, and she's not. Her idea of going to the movies is Adam Sandler movies and Downton Abbey. That's it. That's pretty much her wheelhouse.
That's whose idea of going to the movies?
My wife's.
Oh, okay.
And so she couldn't make heads or tails of what she was watching. And when it was over, she kind of looked at me and she was like, I have no idea what I just sat 3 hours through.
I was going to say, for a second there, I thought you were saying that was Alexis's idea of going to the movie.
No. My wife, Melissa, accompanied me to this.
Alexis and Downton Abbey.
No.
Her boredom would be hilarious.
No.
Carrie is wildly shaking her head.
No, my wife's the one that's into like Downton Abbey and what was it? The Crown.
Hang on, honey. We were not disrespecting Downton Abbey. Mark was saying that was his wife's idea of great entertainment, and I was saying that for a split nanosecond, I thought he was saying, because he was talking about "Damn You Hollywood" previously, saying I thought he was saying that was like Alexis's cup of tea.
Oh. I want to meet her.
Yeah, she says your wife is cool. She wants to meet her.
Terrific. So, I mean, look, the point of me bringing that up, as I did on Tuesday, is that I enjoy watching something with somebody that's out of their wheelhouse to see how they're going to react. And sometimes you turn somebody onto something, and that's cool, and that's, a lot of what drove me making mixtapes back in the 90s, is wanting to turn people onto music they would have otherwise never come across. Other times you get my wife's reaction, which is her just looking at me going, I don't understand what I just saw, which is utterly hilarious to me. And, that's kind of where Jackie Brown lands for me. It's definitely his most restrained, most mature, most non-self-indulgent project he's ever put out to the mass audiences that I can remember. I mean, I don't want to get into, you want to hear my thoughts on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, listen to the podcast, but it's almost the antithesis of that. Whereas Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a sort of meandering love letter to late 60s Hollywood. Jackie Brown is an actual story with a plot and characters. And it goes somewhere and it ends. So I just want to say to the people, I was really struggling tonight to, I wanted to do the podcast and I wanted to talk about a Quentin Tarantino movie. And I wanted to talk about this one because it did divide the audience, just because of its placement in his repertoire, in his releases. But I really, after watching it again, was just like, I don't know what I can say that's bad about this. And so I started reading some IMDb reviews. And the one thing that kept coming up all the time, and I'll talk about it now, I didn't want to talk about it as part of the prosecution, was how bored people were with it. And as I said before, boredom is subjective. What bores one person excites another. I've said before, you couldn't make Dog Day Afternoon now. You couldn't make The Deer Hunter now. The one person that's at least trying to do something similar to that is Quentin Tarantino, but he comes out with a movie like once every 10 years. So, I can see why there's a good portion of the movie-going audience in the world that can't deal with the length and the pacing of Jackie Brown. But then I would suggest you never seeing another Quentin Tarantino movie as long as you live. Like, if you can't handle this, you're not going to like anything that he does. You'll kill yourself by the time The Hateful Eight's over.
This is the low bar for the Quentin Tarantino modus operandi.
Yeah, like I said, if you ever try to... for the people who think Jackie Brown is boring, don't watch The Hateful Eight. You'll kill yourself by the time it's over.
Which, hey, the good news being, Carrie watched Jackie Brown with me and liked it.
Well, good for her.
Stuff.
Outstanding.
Good stuff. In fact, right now I've got the amusement of, while we're wrapping up the podcast, I'm going through the Hulu movie library, and we're trying to decide on what I think we're going to watch.
Well, I hope you'll join us next week. We're gonna turn things around a little bit here. I've got Sean for the next 3 weeks. So it's 4 straight weeks of Sean, every Thursday here.
And you'll like it.
So much Sean, we're going to shove down your throat. Anyway, so next week we've got Orange is the New Black Season 7, the final season. Oh, how I cried. I cried out loud. That'll be a TV party August 8th. We followed it up with yet another Genji Cohen project, Glow Season 3. It'll be myself and the two Seans. I will be the creamy filling in a Sean Oreo.
And lo, there was much fanfic. Not fanfic I ever want to read.
So Sean Garmer from WTM will be on.
Mark just referred to the fact that he's going to be on a podcast with myself and Sean Garmer from WTM as him being the cream in a Sean Oreo.
That's okay. Last week we were discussing Cloak and Dagger, and I ended the podcast with, I open up my cloak and Jesse comes inside me.
Oh.
Dude, let me ask you something. Did you hear that one in your head before you said it?
Absolutely not. And
I was going to say one of two possibilities.
and then finally we end our Thursday show on Thursday on August 22nd with Swamp Thing 1982.
I can think of.
So we hope you'll join us for that. All right. This past week, as I said, we did DC Hanna-Barbera 3 on Monday for source material. We did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood on Tuesday for Damn You Hollywood. Yesterday, we did a particularly non-woke podcast as we discussed the Riot Girls that make up L7. They have a new album out called Scatter the Rats. We also found out that look that Courtney Love was sporting back in the 90s, the baby doll, that actually has a name. It's called Kinderwhore. Who knew? Not this
You
old
didn't
man.
know that?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that ridiculous look had a name. Tomorrow, we'll have a mid-afternoon drop of another TV party show that came out in 2011 that I finally just binge-watched while I'm on work hiatus. Lights Out, brought to you by the good people at FX. Myself and Pat Mullen will discuss it. Saturday, we're trying out somebody new here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Chris Bailey. Victor Kirkado answered the call to join me at the commentary booth for Kaunaki versus Areola, heavyweight boxing in prime time on Fox. Since Pat Mullen isn't available, we may or may not be joined by the Howard Lederman of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, Mr. Robert Winfrey. We'll see if he's done with his MMA coverage by then. Next week, we've got Patsy Walker, a.k.a. Hellcat, Volume 1, Hobbs and Shaw, Volbeat, Rewind, Replay, Reboot, the aforementioned Orange is the New Black. We've got boxing coverage. Carl Frampton Comes Alive versus Emmanuel Diego. Dominguez. I was right the second time. On ESPN Plus, that'll be myself and the returning Pat Mullen. There's a whole bunch of wrestling this weekend. There's Ring of Honor Summer Supercard, NXT TakeOver Toronto, and SummerSlam. We'll talk about it on Tuesday, August 13th. We're going to be doing a split 7-inch source material, DMU Hollywood split 7-inch on The Kitchen. It was just going to be me and Jesse, but then Pat Mullen decided he needed to hate fuck it, so he'll be on the show as well. You're trying to stifle laughter now.
A little bit. A little bit, because, yeah, I'm also very familiar with what happened. Hang on. What, this one?
No.
What are you trying to guide me toward, woman? Here, you take the controller.
They have men in tights.
I'm sorry.
Well, me and the four Podsmen are discussing the SummerSlam weekend. Robert Winfrey, Alexis Hana, and Jason Teasley will be discussing Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. One of the four Podsmen will be making his debut on the Metal Hammer of Doom for Slipknot, We Are Not Your Kind, aforementioned Glow Season 3. For the Super Blog team-up, Jesse and I have decided that we are going to pay our tribute to female-driven sci-fi. Yes, you girls claimed it. We're going to watch it because we support you. And in doing so, we're going to watch Jupiter Ascending. And finally, myself and David Wright from our Canadian office will be doing a special afternoon edition of yet another show we never got to when it was current, the Netflix drop of Lost in Space Season 1. That night, Robert Winfrey is going to attempt to do 411 coverage and a podcast analysis for Cormier versus Miocic 2. It'll probably be a shit show, and we'll never do it again. We've got Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing Volume 1 on August 19th. We've got the new Swamp Thing TV show with myself and Jesse Starcher on the 20th. The Autism Moida, Human Target, on the 21st. The aforementioned Swamp Thing from 1982. And myself, Jesse Starcher, and Al fucking Sedano will be doing Good Omens from Amazon.
I've heard nothing but good things about Good Omens.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about it. On the 25th, right after D23, myself, Alexis Hana, and the good son, Ronnie Adams, will be doing a Screaming Boy podcast talking all about D23. And then we end the month with DC First, Superman Lobo, Krypton Season 2, Rage of Light, Imploder, and Alexis Hana and I will be doing a TV party for the Banana Splits movie that'll be debuting on Sci-Fi, the horror movie that looks an awful lot like Friday Night Freddy or whatever the hell it's called.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Five Nights at Freddy's, yes. And finally, August 31st, as soon as NXT TakeOver UK Cardiff ends, Pat and I are going to jump on the old podcast machine and give you a review of said show. You can hear it just in time for AEW I'm All the Way Out Zip. Go ahead, Sean.
All right. About the only thing that I've got to plug right now, the only two things are, man, my Twitter has been a jumping place the last few weeks. If you want to hear me rant in what's become a surprisingly positive tone about numerous things, join me at Comer Codex. I've also got a sporadic thing that I do where I tweet out 280 character Mass Effect fan fiction.
Did you say slash fiction?
No, fan fiction.
Oh.
I'm not going to say it's not porny at all. I'm just going to say I give you a little snippet of a scene or an idea or whatever that just happens to pop into my head.
What you're saying is you drip a little seed on people.
Your words, not mine. I also ordinarily stream quite regularly over at twitch.tv/ComerCodex. In fact, I am there from 7 p.m. until 10 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday almost every week. I'm kind of taking the rest of this week off. Normally, for the most part, you can expect me finding PvP games, especially Dead by Daylight and Overwatch. However, I'm kind of feeling a little bit of burnout. They're probably both on hiatus for a little bit. I'm going to pick something story-based to play probably for the next couple of weeks until the next Overwatch patch comes out at the end of this competitive season. So by all means, feel free to join me over there. Otherwise, thank you everybody for listening. We appreciate you. You are the reason we do what we do. And so always remember to never dull your colors for someone else's canvas.
Alrighty, everybody. Court is now in recess. Be well, be safe, and behave.
Game of Thrones? Yay. My Game of Thrones rewatches apparently also continue.
Are you looking for something different in your life? A change for your future and just don't know where to begin? Let Florida Career College show you the way. Florida Career College has 10 campuses in Florida that offer hands-on career training in healthcare, business, trades, and more. And they'll teach you the skills you need for a new career, one that you can actually be proud of. Classes are starting now. Text FCC at 474747 to get started today. That's FCC at 474747.
Miami's getting ready for the arrival of FC Barcelona. On Tuesday, August 6th, Bayfront Park is the venue for Barca Fest Miami. It's an event packed with fun, music, and a lot of Barca. Entertainment, Barca store, and food trucks. But the main attraction of the party will be live performances by Play and Skills and Pedro Capó, who's had one of the biggest hits of the summer. See you at Bayfront Park on August 6th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. to enjoy the Barca Fest.